Hey, welcome to the Business of Fun podcast. It's me, Dave Wakeman. Thank you for being with me today. We have a great conversation coming up with one of the OG friends of the podcast, Lauren Teague. When Lauren was on one of the very, very early episodes of the Business of Fun, she was talking about social media, especially her time with the PGA Tour, the Tiger Woods story and how she covered that from a social media perspective, all kinds of stuff. She's an OG friend of the pod, but I'm excited to have her back because now she is the CEO of FanWgn, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But before I talk to you about Lauren, I want to talk to you about a few things that are coming up, a few things that are going on. First of all, if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, I'm going to include this one in the show notes. The last edition of the Talking Tickets newsletter. It covers the Live Nation roundup about the antitrust case that has been filed against Live Nation, talking about alleged monopolistic practices. People have been very complimentary of it. They've enjoyed it. I put a lot of really good resources in there. If you have any interest in the story or you're kind of overwhelmed by all the stuff that's come out about the story, I think it's a great resource. I'm biased though, so I'm going to put that in the show notes. Remember, the Fans for Life workshop is coming up on September 4th in New York City. I have a poll question that's going to come up in the Talking Tickets that goes out with this episode of the podcast, where I'm going to ask you what's the most important thing that you need to know about creating and getting people to buy your tickets right now. But if you have some thoughts about what you're struggling with or where you're finding success, anything like that, send me an email. It's dave@davewakeman.com and let me know what you're thinking, because I want to go beyond the redesign I've already done to make it as relevant as possible for you. So that's the Fans for Life. The survey question will be in Talking Tickets. It's September 4th in New York City. Obviously, it coincides with a Pearl Jam concert, but that's for another day. I'm going to be in London from the 27th of June to the 7th of July. I am going to go see Wimbledon. I'm going to be hanging out. I have a couple of little work-related things that I'm going to be doing there. But I'm looking at putting together a little bit of a happy hour get-together, some kind of excuse to hang out with everybody on 2nd of July. I am looking to lay that all together and get that out to you later on this week, but mark that down in your calendar. Always, if you haven't signed up for the Talking Tickets newsletter already, why? You can find it at talkingtickets.substack.com. Make sure you get that. There's also the Business of Fun, or the Business of Value. This is the Business of Fun. The businessofvalue.substack.com. That's businessofvalue.substack.com. Check out the website, davewakeman.com. There is a store. There are blogs. There are all kinds of things and ways that you can learn and keep up with what I'm doing. But back to Lauren. So Lauren Teague, like I said, an OG friend of the podcast. She came on when I had no track record and I had nothing going on with the podcast. Definitely not 200 and something episodes. And she talked about her career in social media. But this is really great because I'm so excited for Lauren, because she started this idea called FanWgn. And what FanWgn is second fan fashion. And over the last couple months, as she's told me about it, she's made me a member of her Brain Trust is what she calls it, which is her advisory board. And it's a really great idea because second fan fashion is a way for people to take all of their old sports equipment, all their old sports apparel, their sports fashion, and find it a new home. So it combines technology and sustainability and sports, three things that Lauren is really into. And so today we talk about how fan engagement has changed. We talk a little bit about her entrepreneurial spirit. We talk about her journey from being a solopreneur to a founder of a company, the skill sets that go into these things. And we also talk about a really cool thing that she's doing with the Sports PR Summit, which she's doing with Brian Berger in Chicago on June 17th, I believe. In my notes, I will I will tag that as well. We talk about ambition. We talk about where she learns from. We talk about how many items people buy. We talk about, the environmental impact of our apparel. She talks about upcycling. She talks about her career evolution. She talks about strategy, talks about brands. We talk about all kinds of really, really great stuff. Lauren is wonderful. This conversation is great, and I'm not going to delay any longer. So here is my conversation with Lauren Teague once again on the Business of Fun podcast. I want to welcome Lauren Teague back to the Business of Fun podcast. Lauren Teague, what's up?
Hey, Dave. So glad to be back having some fun with you today.
Oh, you make it sound like it's so exciting. So I thank you for that. Now, last time you were here, we were talking all about social media.
That's true.
So today we have an entirely new setup. And I'm very excited about this because I'm going to introduce you slightly before I turn it over to you. But you are now the CEO of FanWgn. And I am part of your brain trust. So when I ask you really ridiculous questions that I should know the answers to, don't hold that against me. So it's but tell us what FanWgn is, especially the idea of second fan fashion, and sell yourself as the awesome CEO that you are now.
Okay, so the pitch goes, I am a mom of 3. I've been in sports my entire life, which means we have a great collection of sports fan apparel from my days at the PGA Tour, Masters polos in obscure sizes that my kids have all grown out of, Dallas Stars jerseys in every size from newborn to whatever my 10-year-old fits into now. And as my kids outgrew these things, I realized that I couldn't donate or discard the items that held the most meaning to us or had these memories associated with them. So I thought, well, where do you find other fans online to give these items to? Because it's not so easy in Oregon to pass along your Masters polos for your kids or your Dallas Stars jerseys. Yet I knew if I found the right family or fan in Georgia or Texas, that these things would have a lot of value to them, not just, meaning, but also they'd be willing to exchange dollars for items. And that's kind of how I stumbled upon FanWgn, because these piles of clothes that held such emotion to our family were stacking up in the closets, and I couldn't find anywhere online to sell them. So somewhere in between 2021, 2022, I was just started asking other people, is this a problem for you too? Do you also have 20 Dallas Stars hats in your closets from every game you've ever been to, like my husband? And maybe it wasn't the Dallas Stars, but yes, a lot of us hold on to the things that have the most meaning and memories. And a lot of that is around the fandom that we share with our sports. But there are no marketplaces that are fan first until today. And so that's why we created FanWgn. FanWgn is the home for, as you said, second fan fashion, and we're on a mission to make fandom both sustainable and shareable through the lens of our apparel.
So you're telling me I'm not unusual that this morning I found that I had a new, unworn, this season Tottenham Hotspur home jersey?
No, not
that somewhere I had it. It still had the tags on it, and I was like, how did I not remember that I had this?
Well, it's not surprising because we know that half of all sports fans are adding to their closet at least once to every month to every other 6 times a year. So that is, we're adding, I don't know, somewhere between 2 and 12 items minimum into our sports closet. So yeah, probably somewhere in there. You have some new with tags jerseys that you completely forgot about that showed up after a game, showed up kind of after the big match, and you kind of just hid them away. Or if you're like me, I tend to hide things in my quote unquote gift closet for kids or other people, and then stumble upon them 6 months after I intended to give them. My husband hates that part, but yeah, you're not alone in that.
Oh, I was it was Jersey Day for my son at school today. And I was like, do you have a jersey? And he has a Mets jersey, and that's fine. That's great. But I was going, what could he have? And I was like, here's this brand new jersey I didn't even know that. It was, I was embarrassed, to say the least. So but that we can talk about how embarrassing I am later, because what I want to talk about for a second is, I mentioned at the start, you're CEO of FanWgn now, and then you had an evolution, right? You worked the PGA Tour, you've worked in social media, you've been a solopreneur for a while, and now you're working as an entrepreneur. That tells me there's an evolution, right? And a lot of times we talk about evolution or we talk about change, but we don't necessarily always have a chance to understand what that looks like. Do you feel comfortable kind of explaining the evolution that you've gone through, and like how, the Lauren I know from years ago has now become the Lauren I know today, and you've grown and changed over the years?
Yeah. Well, I think that if you're not growing and changing just as a person over a career, then in today's world, you're probably doing something wrong. But that is a more existential view of the world. I think I was just talking to a PhD student from Texas about my career trajectory earlier, and I said, I'm approaching 40. I hit a milestone birthday this summer, and I realized that now I have a little bit of perspective, almost 20 years in the workforce, to look back on that kind of evolution and change. And 3 things remained really true to me. I've always been curious about fandom. I've always decided that fandom was something that I wanted to either go back to school and study in an academic lens, or as it turns out, my career has been all about fandom and supporting that. So, that's been true the whole time. We've got, I've had this entrepreneurial spirit the whole time. There are things that at the PGA Tour, before the PGA Tour, even after the PGA Tour, I've always built new roles in companies. I've never walked into a role that's been predefined. So I've built things from the ground up, even when working for other people. So that's been true. So fandom, entrepreneurship, and I really like new tech and digital pieces. And so like when I was in college, we had a Facebook accounts before we had MySpace. When I went to intern at the Trailblazers, Facebook hadn't gotten to Oregon yet. So I had to flip that. I had to learn MySpace so I could network with my friends in Oregon, as well as using Facebook to stay in touch with my friends from college. I did a broadcasting degree literally between the years of 2002 and 2006. Well, in between there, YouTube showed up, right? So I learned how to do digital or linear editing and then non-linear editing in the same college degree program. So those 3 things, being willing to be an early adopter or a digital native with tools, having an entrepreneurial mindset, and being obsessed with fandom in so many forms, have kind of created the boundaries or the guidelines for me to evolve in my career, whether it was a first PR person at a media startup, or the first social media person at the PGA Tour for 7 seasons, or then for a decade working with some of the world's most interesting brands and learning about their marketing approaches and introducing some frameworks that we were working on Convince and Convert, and then deciding that how I was going to take that and teach in my own way, and then how I was going to do that and build kind of this new thing that I couldn't shake, which is FanWgn. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but that's how I've been thinking about it.
That's usually my line, because I'm going, I think I gave you an answer, but I don't know if it was the answer to the question that you asked me. In this case, you turned it around on me, but no, you did. And one of the interesting things that you talked about was that you're always built new roles. And that's kind of how your entrepreneurial spirit has shown up in things. One of the things we were joking about, and it was really all on me, and you were humoring me by laughing at my terrible joke, which thank you, was everybody tries to say they have an entrepreneurial spirit, but I think that they are, that's not necessarily always accurate, because I think it is encapsulated by you have to build new things, right? It's you're taking your skills and applying them in a new way. Whereas what I think people get confused as is that they're willing to work really hard and take chances. And that's not entrepreneurial. It's more entrepreneurial spirit to me seems that you need to apply new thinking to old problems and take things that maybe didn't and create new things out of something that maybe didn't exist before. The question after that long buildup is now that you're building a business as opposed to being just Lauren and as a solopreneur, how does that entrepreneurial spirit kind of show up and move you, right? Because it's not just about being willing to hustle and crush it. It's about also having like a new take on things and applying things in a new way that you can take the resources, the knowledge, the network, all these cool things that you have access to, and applying them in a new and interesting way. Because I think there's a huge gap between the two, and I think that's a lesson that people can learn from.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right in that there's a difference between having an entrepreneurial spirit and building something new in the safety and security confines of someone else's organization, right? When you have the resources of the PGA Tour behind you and the confidence from them to say, like, we don't know what this is supposed to look like, but we trust that you're going to have the right skills and instincts to build something from it, right? But I didn't get to see that one all the way into fruition. When I left the tour after 7 seasons, they backfilled me with 4 different positions because we had gotten to a point where that is what was necessary. And had I stayed in that role, I don't know that I would have made the case successfully to expand in that many different places. So sometimes I think you also have to know, like, when your time is up, or like when it's when you're ready to move on. I think the difference between being a solopreneur, which I did fairly successfully on my own for a decade, and an entrepreneur is like a solopreneur is your own spin on what kind of other people are doing, whether it's consulting or real estate, or ticket sales or speaking, like those things, like your own version of that is a really great way to kind of like test what your capabilities are, where your expertise is, what really interests you. And I think part of being an entrepreneur and shifting that is to think bigger than what you need or what you plus like 2 half-time people need or a couple full-time people on your team. I think it's really like applying that mindset, like you're saying, it's like bringing new thinking to old problems and saying like, how can we see this differently? How should this work in the future? Why isn't this here yet? And quite honestly, and I'm close and close enough to it and also far enough away from it right now to say a big part of like the thinking on FanWgn was a good chunk of time trying to talk myself out of it. Things are good. My kids are young. I've got enough money in the bank. I like to have money in the bank. Like these things, like, why would I go do this thing? And a lot of that, when I was confident enough in an idea to start talking about it with other people, I was looking for ways out. I was looking for ways not to do this thing because it would shake up my status quo. It would shake up what my family is doing. It would shake up what my bank account balance might look like. I mean, all of these things. And what I found, Dave, was that every time I had a reason, I could identify a reason to walk away, I found 3 more reasons to stay in. And 2 things, like I remember 2 moments specifically. One was one of the many times that I was going through my kids' closets and throwing out my oldest son, could be a professional sock tester in his side project. So like if anybody from Nike or Bombas listens to your podcast and they need like a 10-year-old to like wear socks down incredibly fast, they've got you on this. So I throw away a lot of holy socks, and it's disgusting. And I realized that the disgust, the grossness of throwing it, like of not again, right? Holy socks, discarded underwear, and the ick that I personally feel about throwing away textiles that aren't usable anymore. You can only have so many regs. That was the reason, like that the solutions we could create with FanWgn towards solving a textile waste problem that was much bigger than sports apparel. That was like, oh, this is the hook. And once I realized that when we do FanWgn well, we can contribute to reuse and recycle and invest in new textile recycling solutions, then I was like, okay, now I'm in. Now I'm sold. And the other time was I went to visit one of my mentors, Jay Bear, in Indianapolis or in Bloomington. He lives in Indiana. I went to visit him for the weekend after speaking in Indianapolis, and we had some good heart to hearts about entrepreneurship. He's done this several times, built companies and exited them, and you know, I kind of laid it all out for him, and he gave me some really hard things to think about, right? Like some hard truths, some things to think about. And I could have walked away then too. And all I could think about on the way home was I was listening to on how I built this. And I just I created a whole other revenue stream that could come into play in 4 years for FanWgn. And I instead of writing all the reasons why I'm out, I was like, here it is. And I see the whole thing. Right. So, and I got off the plane and I sent him a text with this very long, here's a new rev stream that we could implement in 4 years after XYZ. And I was like, so I know you tried to talk me out of it, but all it did was talk me into it. And I think that those things are you can't underestimate those moments in a founder journey, or in entrepreneurship, because when it becomes bigger than you and you can see it so clearly down the line, then I think that's when you got to take that leap.
Yeah. You bring it all back to this grand, you might not even recognize it, which I think is probably one of the interesting things, is that there's a grand ambition that you have, right? Which is one of the reasons I just never scale. We were talking about, we've been talking about scale either online and offline for a while, is because, I'm like you. I've got a nice thing going. I don't necessarily need to create any problems for myself. But what you have established, which is very interesting, is the grand ambition for FanWgn. And that's really the key foundation for any good strategy is you have to create some sort of ambitious change. Because if it's not a huge thing you're doing, then it is probably not going to really work. I mean, because really then you've just created and forgive the language, but a half-assed job for yourself, one that's more trouble than it's probably worth. Sure. Right. And, so can you tell us a little bit more about this ambition? Because you've kind of touched on it a little bit. It's I want to clean out my kids' closets. Yeah. I want to not throw away as many textiles. How is that all tied together? Because I think that as far as your new role, going from solopreneur to entrepreneur, taking all this risk that's associated with starting something of your very own, it pays a little bit of attention, or it deserves a little of attention, or a little more attention than we've given it to what the grand ambition is.
Of FanWgn?
Yeah.
Yeah, the grand ambition of FanWgn is to save the planet, one jersey, one fan at a time.
See, and that's great.
I mean, there's more to it, right? There is, fandom is fun. Fandom is better shared, right? Yeah. And one of the ways that we share is we gather in stadiums and arenas. We gather in sports bras in Portland, and sports bars around the country, and living rooms to share our fandom. I mean, this afternoon, my family will stop all the things that we do when it's game time for the Dallas Stars, and we will be nervous and wrecks until we claw our way out of this Vegas series to do it, right? So fandom is fun and it's better shared. There's a huge textile waste problem in the world. In fact, the newest stat I just heard was that there are enough clothes and garments on the planet today to clothe the next 6 generations of people. So I think we're at this really we're approaching this reckoning point where, you're hearing stories on NPR about how Mexico's out of water, but it takes, 1,000 gallons of water to make a t-shirt, right? Culturally, we're at this reckoning point that we're going to have to decide if consumerism is more important than climate. And there are companies like mine and founders like me who are saying we can have profits and product and people and planet and purpose, all be part of the equation of running a great business. So maybe we don't need 5 new jerseys a year for our teams. Maybe we don't need all the alternatives. And if we're going to continue to make those, let's do something with the things that are already in people's closets. Because for me, emotionally, if you tie those two things together, fandom is better shared. We have a fast fashion fandom problem. Then I want the things that hold the most meaning and memories from our closet to be the last to the landfill. Because ideally, if they're last to the landfill, that means in the next 5 to 10 years, we've created new solutions for recycling or reusing in that way. And that's where FanWgn intersects. FanWgn intersects in a reuse model today, creating circular solutions for the apparel cycle, but also to contribute to supporting people who are going to upcycle jerseys and turn a giant jersey into a dress. Or, you know, these like great creators who are showing their process on Instagram, who are creating, like taking 3 sweatshirts and turning it into one, right? There are so many ways that we can reuse what we have. And we just want to kind of intersect on that. So there is a greater ambition there because, you know, it's truly a product of, you know, what the world's going to be facing collectively, and is facing.
And if I put on my professor of applied brand management hat,
yeah, do it
right there. One of the things that teams do, maybe especially in the States, I won't talk about it globally because a lot of the teams outside of the States do a lot better job of managing their brands than the teams in the States do. What your idea, it butts right up against really great brand management as well, because taking these things that are from years past and finding a way to recombine or to use them in new and interesting ways, it reinforces that connection that you have, right? It uses nostalgia, which is very powerful in brand building, to create, to extend that connection, to grow those meaningful brand connections, to use distinct brand assets you have, not just once, but over and over and over again. And it's just like, to me, it's really smart. But, you know, I've said that to you many, many times so far. But let's touch on one more thing before I let you go, because I know how busy you are these days. You have also another interesting project that you're taking part in Chicago in June, I believe it is, which is you tell me the name because I'll butcher it, because I'll screw up.
one of my connections.
I can't read my own notes, is what I'm telling you.
That's okay.
Handwritten. Scribble scrabble.
One of my connections to the sports industry after I left the PGA Tour was to join forces with Brian Berger and the Sports PR Summit. And that is a industry event, kind of a think tank, very like kind of invite only, really fun day of networking and learning and discussing what's happening across sports PR and communications, and these changes. So it's an event that Brian started in 2013. And I've been involved since the very beginning as a speaker, and then joined forces after I left the tour. Coming back in 2024, we're going to be at Wrigley Field, hosted by the Chicago Cubs. Attendees get to go. We are doing the VIP tour of Wrigley. We get to go to a game after the final conversation of the evening. It's going to be a great day in Chicago. I'm super excited about it. And I'm really kind of, just like you had introduced me on the pod as like, well, you've been here before, and before you were a social media person. And this is another example of like where I am excited to kind of show the evolution of a career and say, like, you all know me from 10 years ago as the social media person at the PGA Tour. Guess what we get to do? Like, Lauren grew up, like, you know, and
Lauren grew up.
and I think that it's interesting to look at people like that I've been in this community with for 10 years to say, like, where have you gotten in? Where has your career taken you? And whether it's been more traditional or non, I think that's the really exciting thing about being part of a community for so many years, is that like you can see and people kind of move forward together and grow together. And I understand this isn't a new thing, but it's kind of new to me, because now I'm at this like transitionary place again in a career where a lot of the people that I started with at the tour 15, 16 years ago, you know, I see their titles and I see where they're at and I see the moves that they've made. And it's fun to watch that kind of effect across. And so I think that's kind of speaks to that.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely true. And it's like, even if you take the time since that we've known each other, which goes back strangely enough, it's May 1st. So it's actually almost like 6 years that we've known each other, because that's how long I really like reached out to you. And you were very generous to come on the podcast when nobody owed me a thing. I was just the numpty who knew how to sell tickets. And now I'm like Mr. Brand, and like I got introduced at a class I spoke at SMU as like the strategy guy. And I was like, so the thing I want everybody to take from today is that like you're not stuck in the position you're in, right? You're not, you might be there, but if you're always kind of growing and building and you keep that curiosity, then you have an opportunity to do any kind of interesting and cool things that you like. And that's like what I find most awesome about still knowing you all these times later and still getting to share experiences with you, is how much you've evolved and how much you've changed.
Well, I think,
and how cool it is.
Going towards that, like I'm a brand person too. I'm a brand strategist as well by training or trade. And that thought of what do you want to be known for is last year is very, very clear. I want to be known for fandom. I don't want, like, the social media stuff was fine, and but I'm not a current social media creator in the same way that I used to be. So, but I want to be known as like, how specific can we be? Well, I want to be known for fandom, whether it's through FanWgn, as literally building a brand around fandom and how fun that is, but also teaching brands and individuals and teaching that side of it as of the brand to fan approach. What does a fandom journey look like? Why is that different than a traditional customer journey map? It involves both marketing and PR touch points and messaging and this kind of really integrated approach. And so I want people to, I think that speaks to, you might not know where you want to be positioned, but if you kind of can connect some dots and then say and articulate that, like, I want to be known for fandom, right? You want to be known for strategy. So whatever that piece is, like, you could just start to put that out there, whether it's changing your Instagram bio or, grabbing a website domain or starting a podcast or whatever. Like, anybody, no matter who you're working for and in what role, like, you can set, whether it's fun or business related or however, like, you can define that for yourself and you can evolve it. So, and it will evolve over time for sure.
Yeah. It's never as drastic the change, the evolution, as people like to make it sound.
Sure.
It's just like if you start connecting the dots, and it can be, I think what you have to do is you have to be confident in yourself that, like, you're heading in the right direction, or you're heading towards what you want to be, because there's always going to be one or two naysayers that are the minority that are going to tell you, like, well, you can only be the social media person. You can only be the ticket guy. And the truth is like, don't let those people tell you no, because we're both a testament to the fact that you can become whoever you want to, right? That's the beauty of the thing. It's like, it's much easier to become an expert, to change the trajectory of what you're working on, than people let on. And that's, again, one of the awesome things about knowing you and talking to you is, like, seeing somebody else do exactly what I did, so that I know that I'm not crazy and it's only me, because now I know that, like, other people can do it, and then we can share that story, because now you're the CEO of FanWgn. Mm-hmm. You brought a brand new term to the world, second fan fashion.
And I trademarked it.
This is why, who needs a strategist when you got Lauren? And you're one of and I can say this and you can run with it. So you're one of probably the two or three people in the world that I know of that when I think of fandom, and there's really you're one of two people that when I think about fandom, that I think of as, like, the people I want to listen to when it comes to fandom. You and Zoe Skaman, another guest on the podcast, because I know all the smart ladies. It's just what I do. Are great, and, like, the fact that you've taken over that word and, like, you're making that word your own is just really a testament to, like, your vision. And so I'm excited to see what you do next. But before I say goodbye, I want you to tell people how to find you, because we got to plug some stuff,
We got to plug some stuff.
What we're here for.
I would be remiss if I didn't tell everyone to go to fanwagn.com, and that's FANWAGN.com. We've taken some cues from those early 2000s companies that didn't need vowels. Also, that's what was available on the domains when I went looking. So FANWAGN is how we spell FanWgn. We've got the website, marketplace. You can also just Google Second Fan Fashion. We should come up. Also, we're on the Instagrams and Facebooks and maybe TikToks of the world as well under FanWgn. We're doing some cool marketing, working with college athletes through NIL, probably another reason to come back on the podcast and talk about that down the road. So we've got some cool brand ambassador stuff rolling out on college campuses later this year. So keep an eye out for that. And then if you're looking for me personally, LaurenTeague.com is my personal website that has some speaking information, some brand to fan approach. And if you're looking for the Brand to Fan show as a podcast that you'd love to catch up on, do it, because we're going to be dropping new episodes here momentarily. And you can find that anywhere you can find podcasts or brand2fan.show.
Awesome.
Well, Lauren, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
I always love to get to catch up with you, and I'm glad that it wasn't just me and you talking today. We had some friends listening. So
yeah.
Let me know what you thought of my conversation with Lauren Teague by sending me an email. It is my name, Dave@DaveWakeman.com. Also, I'd like to point you to the show notes, where you will find a link to the latest or the last edition, which probably won't be the last edition by the time you get to it, of the Talking Tickets newsletter, where I do the Live Nation Roundup. You guys have been very generous. You have been very nice with your feedback. I have gotten a lot of really great emails, so I want to make sure you do see this. Let me know what you want to and need to learn in the upcoming workshop, Fans for Life. There is a poll question in the Talking Tickets newsletter that goes out in conjunction with this episode with Lauren Teague, or you can send me an email, Dave@DaveWakeman.com. Mark your calendar for the 2nd of July. I'm going to try to figure out how to do some kind of Talking Tickets meetup in London, in the UK. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. We're going to get together. Also, you've made it this far. We're about 38 minutes into this episode. I know you love the podcast. I see the numbers. They're great. People still listen wildly more than I would ever have imagined. So do me a favor. Would you share this episode with your friends and colleagues? Post it on social media. Make sure that I can continue to give you these conversations and have these conversations with you. Lots of cool stuff coming up. I want to get even more really great guests and give you even more good information, because it's important. You need it. And I love to give it to you. So please share, please rate, please review the podcast. All of these things helps me rise in the ratings, helps me attract better guests, and all that crazy stuff. But thank you for doing this. As I say in every episode, or I try to, I couldn't do this without you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for spending your time with me. I really appreciate you. And until next time, take it easy, and I'll talk to you soon.